Good afternoon, it's EMS Automotive Products from Detroit, Michigan. Manufacturers of sheet metal for Chevrolets 1935 to 1954, Ford cars 1935 to 1958, and Ford pickup trucks 48 to 66. What we're going to do today is we're going to do a video on how to install patch panels. We get lots of calls on how to do things. We get lots of calls on how to fix mistakes. What we're going to do, I learned this from Brent over at Fat Man's. This is all about planning. That makes your job go easier. We're going to start. We've got a 1950 Chevrolet over here that we're going to hoist up in the air, and we're going to go over how to install patch panels and why, and what are some of the most difficult things to do. Obviously, we are in our research center in Detroit, Michigan. Our skunk works, 45,000 square feet dedicated to engineering parts for old cars. We make our parts in Detroit where car parts are supposed to be made. Okay, we have a document over here. It is available on Facebook. We're going to make sure we're going to get it reposted to our website. So if you go to our Facebook page, EMS Automotive Products, you'll be able to find us and print this out. One of the most important things guys ask is, where do I start and how do I do it? Okay. For some reason, guys like to get the engine and transmission in there so they can make engine sounds, I guess. I don't know. That's not really what you want to do. Okay. We got this old Chevy here that is not in the worst shape, but it's pretty bad, but savable car. One of the most important things is, if we look at the body has been dented, it has been smashed, the doors obviously froze over here, it's been rusted, all kinds of different places. Okay, now we got a couple of major areas to line up. You got to make sure your trunk lid's closed, you make sure your door's closed. Okay, guys over here, they buy the rotisserie, they like to do this, right away they want to take the body off the frame. Do not do that. This car could have rusted floor pans, rusted floor braces, all kinds of rust on it. You take the body off, it's going to move. And people are going to say, well, I took the doors off and I put some angle iron and I cross braced it. All you did was cross brace it in the position it was. You still don't know if the doors are going to open or close correctly. What we're going to do is we're going to kind of go over how we're going to do it and talk about some of the various things. The area that I like to start with first is the tail pan in the back. Okay, and the reason I want to get to the tail pan is it has the biggest door, the trunk lid. It's bigger than the side doors. Okay, and it's often rusted. And the tail pan, this one happens to be solid. The tail pan connects fender to fender, connects the back part of the car. If this thing is rusted and you pull it off, what's left of the quarters is flapping in the air and you don't know what's happening. Okay, we want to change your tail pan, get your heavy body work done. You don't have to get it all done on the frame. Leave it on the frame, because that's your base. That's your base. Just like it's your foundation for your build is that frame. That is everything. So what we're going to want to do is as you put your tail pan in, I recommend you some guys tack it in. They got fancy clamps. I use a couple of pop rivets just to hold it in place. Make sure my trunk lid closes. Okay. Now you got to remember, on some of the older cars, the hinges were out, so when you close your trunk lid, it'll wobble down here. You got to either make an adjust for that or get some new hinges, fix it. Generally, on most cars in the auto industry, the gap between the fender and the trunk lid is 1/8 of an inch. Okay. That's your theoretically perfect mark. It can go as low as a 1/16. It can go high as 3/16. Very difficult to get it to an 1/8 all the way around, but you can do it if you want to put that time into it. Okay, if you're under or over, I would stop and fix the problem, because otherwise under a 1/16 it's going to rub when you slam it or close it or whatever. If you put poppers in there, all that stuff has to line up. You want to get that lined up. Okay, and do your heavy welding over here. Okay, you don't have to grind it, you don't have to finish it. Same thing. Okay, people are going to say, I want to do the trunk floor first. No, you don't want to do the floor pans, because all you did, if you've changed the floor pans, is you've welded the car into a position that may not work, and we'll get to that later. So we got the tail pan, we got the trunk lid closing, really nice. Okay, we want to go off to the side of the car. A nice thing about our research center is we just pick this thing up with the crane and spin it around, and we can see we're going to get it up higher later. Okay, same thing comes to the side here. I wouldn't be worrying about the quarter panels. I go to the next most important thing, the door. The door has to look good when you're at the car show, and guys are going to look at. They're going to judge your work. I'm going to raise it up. They're going to judge your work by how that door jamb looks. Okay? If that gap looks nice, you say, hey, this guy's pretty good. If it's overlapping and touching, oh man, you know. But here again, this is not unusual damage, a banged in door, smashed in rocker panel. Okay? Okay. If you did, and the reason I want to fix this is I want to make sure this door opens and closes the way it is supposed to. And in order to do that, you need to do the parts around it. Okay, this one has the fender on it. You fix that. There's a lower cowl behind it. Okay, which actually holds the hinges. Now you got to remember, if you're off a 64th of an inch over here, you multiply that by a 4-foot door, this thing's way off. This is why this is so important. You want to make that gap fit right and look good. That's what makes a car look good at the car show. Okay, it makes the work easier for you. Now, in order to do the door, okay, we got to do the two most important parts, which would be the cowl and the hinges, and the quarter panel over here. Okay, I like to start with the quarter panel because it's kind of a more complicated one. It has a door jamb and it has a wheel opening. So both of these have to work, especially on the 50s cars. You got fender skirts, it has to fit. So you want to get this lined up and check it with the door to make sure the door closes, because your latch is over here. You know, you think this door over here, it's been banged over here. Well, you don't know if this is pushed out a little bit. Oh, it doesn't look like it. You don't know until you get that door on there and close it. It should close like a normal car door. You shouldn't have to slam it, and you shouldn't have to jerk it to get it open. You go for that 1/8 inch gap. So you get this on there, and here again, you don't do the final welding. You tack it on there, a couple of pop rivets, whatever. I like steel pop rivets because they'll weld through them if they get in the way and grind them off later. And then I go back. Rocker panel is the last piece, because the rocker panel only has to come up to the bottom of the door, and we got a little bit of give here, and we got some trim. Our rocker panels are usually a little bit long. They overlap, so you trim it, you fit it in, and now you got your gap, and your door can open and close. Okay, if you did the floor pan and this was and you welded it in and this was in the wrong spot, you'd have to cut the floor pan loose. So there's no reason to do that. You want to make the car look good from the outside. That's what's most important. Then we go to the floor pans. Okay. And the rocker panel is the last piece to put on, because if we got the door opening, closing, and latching here, we just bring the rocker panel up to the bottom, give it the correct gap, and we're okay. We're trimming in there. The floor pans, if they were in, you'd have all this stuff locked into place. How would you adjust anything to get the door to close? Okay. And if you need the door bottom, you can put the door bottom on. Usually the doors are still good enough rusty. You can do the adjustments here in the rocker panel without having to do the door bottoms unless it's really bad. And then we got door bottom kits. So you get this on there. So now you have the trunk lid closing properly, the tail pan on, you got the front door closed properly, you got this tacked into place, you got this tacked into place, you got your cowl, your front door jamb ready to go. Now you can do the floor pans. Because if you got to trim something or something quite doesn't fit or whatever, just trim it, make it go in. You're going to throw the carpeting over it. You don't have to cut it out, it's just there. Our floor pans are a little extra long, so you put them in there. And get your floor braces in there. And like I said, a lot of this is in our document, How to Install Repair Panels by EMS. If you have fender skirts, obviously you want to put them in there, but fender skirts never really fit well anyways, even from the factory. and you get your body lines in. I'm going to raise the vehicle up. We're going to take a look at the floor braces. The floor braces really came about in the middle 1940s, 41s, 48s. That was the way of making the body wider and hanging it off the frame. Now underneath over here, we can see we have a floor brace here. We have a floor brace here. There's one over here behind all this mess. Okay. Now obviously this is going to be interesting is to how do you do that? Is the floor braces part of the floor pan or part of the outside? It's more likely to go to the outside because as the floor, if we look over here, the floor brace goes from one side to the other, okay? Usually the ends rust out, you repair that. That gives you something to hang the inner rocker and the quarter panel to. So you'll get your floor braces in there. It's not exactly part of the floor pan, but it's something you want to do because otherwise this part of the car won't be sitting on it. Now right here is a floor brace that's almost totally rusted out. There's not much left of it. And that's holding the back side of the rocker panel. So it's kind of a joint venture with floor braces and rocker panels to get it in. Okay. If you took this car off the frame, this car would collapse. It would get so bent out of shape, you'd end up doing a lot more work. It's not that anything can't be done or not. We're trying to do it the easiest way. Okay, and the easiest way is doing it so we don't have to go backwards. So that's what we're looking at with the, like I said, with the floor braces here and this. And then you just come in and you put the floor pans in and it's over with. Then you do some welding. Then you can go to your body rotator and make it easy to do the welding and the grinding and the fitting, you know, of all the little pieces and stuff like that. Now some people want to know how do you weld the car? Okay, all of our, you know, in the old days we had gas welding. Before that, and there's a confusion to what hammer welding is. Hammer welding is, in the day when it was invented, it was just heating up two pieces of metal and beating them together. Okay, that is hammer welding. Unfortunately today, a lot of people consider coining the weld or beating the weld with a hammer welding. It isn't, it's just stress relieving. It's a good technique if you want to do it, but make sure. On the newer steels coming out of Detroit, EMS always uses automotive grade steel. We never use any black Chinese tissue paper. MIG welding is fine. Your 110 volt MIG welder is more than acceptable to weld on cars. Okay. Now some people are going to ask about the glues. I wouldn't use the glues only in a few certain areas, possibly the door skin, because it's easy to warp, even for the most experienced welder. People can say, well, this guy TIGs this or this guy TIGs that. TIG is not any better of a weld than MIG welding. When you weld the two pieces of metal together, it's as strong as the two pieces of metal. TIG welding was just around before we had 110 volt welders. So, but it's an expensive machine, doesn't really do much. Yeah, they used it for roll cages and stuff because they couldn't stick weld the tube. You're on the ground, you're on the frame, and you need to adjust door posts and door things. So what we do is, I'm going to lower the car a little bit. Okay, I try to avoid using a hydraulic jack to do anything, but if you go look inside your pickup trucks have little mechanical jacks. They could be scissors jacks, they could be just little bottle jacks that are mechanical. Well, those are great. You go to the junkyard, you get 8 or 10 of those. You can place them around the body, and you can infinitely adjust your body panels. It's a very cheap way of doing it, and it will hold it while you go around. Using a floor jack, you usually overpressure or underpressure and you don't want to have 8 or 10 floor jacks around while you're trying to do something or hammering shims in there. So I use the little bottle jacks that come out of the pickup trucks. Like as you go to junkyard, you get them real cheap. You put them around the car wherever you need to hold it up. You need to apply some pressure. And one of the things to remember is when you do the floor pans, most of these cars have a rubber pad between the frame and the floor pan. Normally it's a pretty hard rubber. It's about 1/4 of an inch thick. And now as you're adjusting the body, it's nice to have the rubber there, keeps it from squeaking. But don't think that as we rebuild this old car, the frame is sagging, this is whatever, that is going to stay there. It could be a little bit less than 1/4, could be a little bit more. Wouldn't worry about it too much. Okay, shimp if you need it, take it away if you don't. The most important thing to remember is your door and trunk lid must look good and close when the car is done. That is everything about it. Now, some of the engines and transmissions you're going to have to be careful of. There's a lot of people are trying to use LS motors, and they're also calling the truck motor out of the GM cars, the 5.3s, the 6.0s. They're calling them LSs. They're really more Vortex. Yes, the short and long block or short block assembly is the same, but the external components are different for a pickup truck. They are more difficult to put into certain cars. I would not use an LS motor in anything prior to 1940. It's not going to fit well. Okay, it's just the engine compartments are just too narrow. The Fords are short and narrow. The Chevys are long and narrow. Usually when you get into 46, 48, you start to get a more square one. But even then, watch out that the chassis shops sell you some kits that put your engine and transmission too high up and too far back. You will have fit problems. Okay, no matter what they say, we hear about it all the time. Okay, if you're not sure, we recommend 2 places. We recommend Heights. We recommend Fat Man Fabrications on North Carolina. If you need good information on frame, those are the people we recommend. If you need it, take it away if you don't. The most important thing to remember is your door and trunk lid must look good and close when the car is done. That is everything about it. Now, some of the engines and transmissions you're going to have to be careful of. There's a lot of people are trying to use LS motors, and they're also calling the truck motor out of the GM cars, the 5.3s, the 6.0s. They're calling them LSs. They're really more Vortex. Yes, the short and long block or short block assembly is the same, but the external components are different for a pickup truck. They are more difficult to put into certain cars. I would not use an LS motor in anything prior to 1940. It's not going to fit well. Okay, it's just the engine compartments are just too narrow. The Fords are short and narrow. The Chevys are long and narrow. Usually when you get into 46, 48, you start to get a more square one. But even then, watch out that the chassis shops sell you some kits that put your engine and transmission too high up and too far back. You will have fit problems. Okay, no matter what they say, we hear about it all the time. Okay, if you're not sure, we recommend 2 places. We recommend Heights. We recommend Fat Man Fabrications on North Carolina. If you need good information on frame, those are the people we recommend. Get a hold of us. We have a website, which is
EMSautomotive.com.
You don't have to buy there. That's just where you go to look at everything, or you can call us on the telephone, 248-546-0232. Thank you very much.